Alright, it's me, your girl, Melipona, your favorite dating sim YouTuber, here to continue with Tears of Themis. I believe this is part 7. What we just finished up doing was we spent some time with Luke and he fixed the CCTV camera so that we were able to access the memory card slot. And now we're just getting ready to prepare for the trial, and based on this image, even though there's no description, it looks like we're going to go back to the office and talk to Artem, which should be really helpful because even though we've collected and collated the evidence, we still need some direction on how we should proceed with the case. So let's dive right in. We're in Luke's antiquity shop called Times Antiquities, which is the cover for his detective agency. While organizing evidence with Luke, you suddenly think of something important. The chemical analyses and fingerprints we obtained may not be admissible evidence. I need to send them to the police to be reassessed by a qualified professional. No need. I'll print out formal reports for the evidence and sign them. My stamp of approval is just as valid. Really? Oh, okay. So swoony. Yours? How are you? I'm no ordinary private detective. Luke is definitely hiding something from you. You're going to have a long chat with him once you have the time. What's your strategy for approaching this trial? Are you going to go for Delicart or Pedro himself? We don't have enough evidence at this time to implicate Delicart. First things first, I'll have to prove that Pedro was the perpetrator. Then the judge can dismiss the plaintiff's claims for compensation. For Mr. Green. Makes sense. How are you going to prove that Pedro had a motive to commit the crime, though? See, these are all the questions I was asking, so it's good that Luke and I are kind of on the same page. So he's helping me collate my evidence. But I feel like Luke is maybe leading too much. He's not a lawyer, so I don't know. It's definitely to help me as the viewer because I'm not a lawyer and I don't have these instincts. But I was already on that case, Luke, so don't talk down to me. This is my job. I'm a professional. Pedro's motive must be established first before he can be considered a suspect. Okay, motive. We're going to do failed hard sell and Pedro's performance pressure. Find connections. Connection found. Pedro's motive was Delicart's pressure on him to reach his sales target. Mr. Green did say that Delicart pushes employees in a humiliating way, more than humiliating, in an abusive way, if they don't reach their targets. Pedro could have reached his target if Mr. Green purchased Delicart's premium service. But Winnie said that Mr. Green turned him down on numerous occasions, which may have pushed him to take such drastic measures. True, Mr. Green really doesn't care about the negative comments on the app. Pedro could only sell his company's services if something serious happened to the restaurant. Exactly. Now that we have a motive, we need to prove that he had opportunity. For example, a window of time he could have committed the crime. So that is Pedro entry-exit times and water delivery? Connection found. The surveillance video shows that Pedro was in the restaurant at a time that Mr. Green said no one was around. By then, the spring water had already been delivered. But the footage only shows his presence, not the insecticide 330. We'll need other evidence to prove that he possessed the tools for the crime. And then that's my last two. How do I prove that Pedro had the insecticide 330 that was used? Receipt, purchaser's account, records of financial support for Pedro. Because they link the bank accounts together. Connection found. The receipt shows part of the purchaser's payment account number, which matches Pedro's personal bank account number from the restaurant's transaction records. Pedro also unwittingly gave us a piece of evidence. End analysis. We all saw him operating the smart lock and entering the restaurant. Now we have proof that the fingerprints on the receipt and in the smart lock's database belong to Pedro. That means he was the one who had the toxic insecticide. If he denies it, you can ask the judge to compare the fingerprints in court. Pedro must have brought the receipt to the restaurant while he was committing the crime, else it wouldn't have found its way under the cabinet by accident. We found the same prints on the receipt and water dispenser, and we know insecticide 330's chemical composition. The FSB's incident report indicates that the causative agents for the food poisonings are the same as those found in insecticide 330, but there's still room for Pedro to bluff his way out. See, that's what I thought. We don't have, not that you need, a smoking gun, actual evidence of someone committing a crime in order to get them convicted, but it all comes down to chance if you don't have that amount of evidence. He could claim that he bought the insecticide and took apart the dispenser, but didn't go through with it. We don't have more direct evidence to prove he did it, but what we do have should be sufficient to prove to the court that this was a premeditated crime. That's exactly what I thought. True. Once this becomes a criminal case, Mr. Green will be off the hook. We'll also have more time to find more evidence. Alright, that's enough for one day. You must be exhausted. Let's grab dinner tonight. No, please don't say no. I want to go to dinner with him. Sorry, Luke, but I don't have much of an appetite. I should head back to the office and organize everything. I'm really grateful for all your help today, but let's do this another time. I'll be off. Wait, at least let me send you. I'm worried about you walking over like this. Luke calls a taxi and escorts you to the law firm's ground floor. You enter the elevator and lean against the wall, watching Luke's concerned face gradually disappear as the elevator doors close. You feel the weight of everything sinking in. Exhaustion and distress set in, and you can't help but slowly fall to the ground, hugging your calves. That's why you need to eat. I mean, Luke's not just suggesting dinner so he can spend more time with you, all that would be enough. What will happen to Vernon and his restaurant? How can you bring Delicart to justice? Will your first collaboration with Luke as an adult end in failure? You won't accept that. Themis Law Firm. When you return to the office and see its familiar logo, something important hits you. Isn't the Pax Group our own client? Oh no. Conflict of interest. Chills go down your spine as you realize the implications of this situation. What is it? How was your investigation? As soon as you see Artem, the weight on your shoulders doubles. Mr. Wing, isn't the Pax Group our client? Correct. Are they involved? This isn't a simple food poisoning case, but a premeditated criminal case. Pedro Brooks from Delicart poisoned the water. Delicart seems to be affiliated with the Pax Group. And, did they threaten you? Not Pax, but Pedro. How did you respond? I told him that even the Von Hagen family isn't above the law, and that I'd take this fight to the Supreme Court if I have to. I had an adrenaline rush when I said that, but we're in trouble now, Mr. Wing. Well said. You're one of Themis's people. Huh? Pax Capital hasn't officially invested in Delicart. Even if they had, there is nothing to worry about. If Pax is willing to cut ties with us for such a company, so be it. If Pax's president, Austin Von Hagen, or his successor, Marius Von Hagen, trouble you because of this, tell me. I'll help you sue them into bankruptcy. Oh my gosh, his faith in us and I don't know, that really boosted my spirits a lot. Upon hearing Artem's words, you're momentarily taken aback, but then you burst into laughter. What is so funny? I never thought I'd hear you say something like that. Thank you, Mr. Wing. I've realized how fortunate I am to work at Themis. Receiving rare praise from Artem lifts your spirits. I just said that it lifted my spirits. Oh my goodness. Before you can discuss case details with him, Winnie arrives at the law firm. She gives you a piece of key evidence on Vernon's behalf. Kitchen surveillance video obtained. Vernon would rather this evidence not be used in court since he still holds conflicting feelings towards Pedro. It looks like we're ready for the trial. So, I'm nervous. Are you guys nervous? I'm nervous. All right, trial time. Let's bust this out. Wednesday, court day. Sitting in the waiting room, you look at the memory card Winnie gave you with a heavy heart. Grandpa Vern said there's actually another CCTV camera hidden in the kitchen. It was actually Pedro who suggested it. It was originally installed to keep an eye on the staff, but now... Grandpa Vern hopes this evidence won't be needed. Using it would make him feel like he's putting Pedro in prison with his own hands. The surveillance video clearly shows Pedro disassembling the dispenser and putting insecticide 330 into the tank at 7:32 a.m. on the day of the incident. In the video, Pedro seems to be worried that he put too much insecticide in. He pours out some contaminated water and dilutes the tank with tap water. After that, Pedro disappears for a few minutes. You suspect that he felt the water was too dilute and added more insecticide 330. However, this part wasn't seen by the camera or Vernon. That is why Vernon didn't clean the dispenser even though he knew Pedro was the culprit. Pedro must have been conflicted about his actions, but his desire for momentary wealth eventually prevailed. You obtained key evidence to win the trial, but you don't feel happy about it. You suddenly receive a text message from Luke. He's on a special case, so he can't come? Aw, I wish he could see me win this trial with his own eyes. I said that we probably weren't going to see a lot more of Luke, so... Artem stands before the French windows and hesitates for a moment before making a call on his phone. Vin, it's me. I found a candidate. As per procedure, please conduct a psychological evaluation. We're discussing work, not my personal feelings. Right. I'll arrange for her to meet you ASAP. I'm just going to do my normal narration voice for the judge. I don't know how many lines he has, but I don't want to try to do another weird voice. Court is in session for the food poisoning case at Penny's Comfort Foods. The prosecution will first give their opening statement. Ooh, he has the same eyes as Pedro. Your Honor, I am Howard Sider from Balder Legal Office, and I will be representing John Doe and 5 other victims in a class action lawsuit against Penny's Comfort Foods. On Friday the 3rd of this month, John Doe and 5 other victims ate lunch at Penny's Comfort Foods. Due to faulty management, insecticide contaminated the water used to make seafood tofu soup, causing my clients to seek medical attention for abdominal pain and diarrhea. This incident not only damaged my client's health, but also caused severe psychological trauma. They have been unable to enjoy food without concerns to this day. I wish I could sue someone for my food enjoyment issues. The diet industry. I'm suing you. As such, on behalf of my clients, I am demanding $30,000 in compensation from Penny's Comfort Foods for each victim. The defense may now present their opening statement. Your Honor, I will be wholly representing the defendant and owner of Penny's Comfort Foods, Mr. Vernon Green, due to his poor physical health. The plaintiff is demanding compensation from Penny's Comfort Foods based on the assumption that this is a case of food poisoning due to negligence. However, this assumption is completely wrong. This case is actually a deliberate and premeditated criminal case. Mr. Green is not at fault and should not be responsible for compensatory damages. Are you making these absurd claims because your client is unable to pay compensation? The nature of this case has already been validated by the Food Safety Bureau's incident report. Objection. Objection. That report only validates the fact that the food was contaminated by a toxic substance. It does not prove intent. The true perpetrator of this crime is Mr. Pedro Brooks, a sales manager at Delicart. Counsel, Mr. Brooks is currently unrelated to this case. Do you have evidence to support your claim? I will present sufficient evidence to the court, and I ask that Mr. Brooks be called to the stand. The court calls Mr. Pedro Brooks to the stand. The old man's crazy. He's just trying to drag me down with him. Despite Mr. Brooks' emotional outburst, I also suspect that the defense's smoke and mirrors are an attempt to divert our attention. According to the FSB's incident report, the affected customers had ingested toxic insecticide chemicals, resulting in abdominal pain and diarrhea. However, Mr. Green had instructed his employees to purchase Bug Out, which is an insecticide that is not toxic to humans. Mr. Green's words themselves are hardly convincing evidence. Even if he did purchase a toxic insecticide, he would not dare tell you. Objection. His words can be substantiated. The poisoning insecticide was purchased by Mr. Brooks. The evidence is a receipt for the professional-grade insecticide 330 was found inside the restaurant. Insecticide 330 is harmful to humans. While it's non-lethal, it causes abdominal pain and diarrhea. These symptoms match what the FSB said in their incident report. The payment account numbers shown on the receipt match Mr. Brooks' personal bank account number. That's a wild guess. The receipt only shows part of an account number. You can't prove that's my account. Intentional contamination constitutes a criminal case. As long as the evidence is shared with the prosecution, it is a simple matter to identify the account owner. Additionally, your fingerprints were found on the receipt. Mr. Brooks, please explain this. Even if I bought it, that doesn't prove I poisoned the water. I bought it for personal use because there's an infestation problem at my place. I probably dropped it when I went to visit the old man. When did you visit Mr. Green? After the incident, of course. Delicarp provides customized public relations services to its clients. I went to Vernon to help him out, but who knew that penny pincher cares more for his money than his restaurant's reputation? I can attest to that, Your Honor. My clients attempted to settle with Mr. Green out of court, but he refused to pay compensation. Hence, we are here right now. Objection. Your clients attempted to extort Mr. Green for a compensation value that far exceeded the legal limit. Of course my client would not pay. Mr. Brooks, you did indeed visit Mr. Green at his restaurant, but not only after the incident. Pedro went to the restaurant before the incident and had the chance to poison the water. The evidence is front door surveillance video. CCTV footage shows that on the morning of the incident, you entered Penny's Comfort Foods at 7:28 a.m. and left at 7:43 a.m. The footage also shows that the water was delivered at 6 a.m. Mr. Green and the caretaker were buying ingredients between 6:30 and 8 a.m., and the server started work at 9 a.m. While you were at the restaurant, no one else was present and the spring water had already been delivered. Can you explain what you were doing there? Why would you be alone in an empty restaurant for 15 minutes? I wanted to sell Vernon our premium services. He wasn't in, so I waited for a bit. He was taking forever, so I left. Your Honor, Mr. Brooks' explanation is reasonable. He is simply a sales manager who works hard to perform well. Objection. He works hard, but not in an ethical manner. The evidence that proves Mr. Brooks poisoned the spring water is... Mr. Brooks, you did not idly wait during those 15 minutes at the restaurant. A large amount of insecticide 330 residue was found inside the water dispenser, and your fingerprints were present as well. How do you explain this? I was just thirsty, so I got some water from the dispenser. Then why were your fingerprints found near the internal filter? There is nothing to say. The insecticide did not contaminate the water by accident, as stated in the FSB's incident report. This is a case of intentional poisoning. The water was coming out too slowly, so I took apart the dispenser to check it. Do not lie. The water dispenser operates without any problems. I can demonstrate here in court. I don't have any reason to do that. Why would I try to damage the restaurant's reputation? When I first came to Stella's, I was a job-seeking high school dropout. Vernon was the one who encouraged me to study for college entrance exams so I could change my destiny. I've always been grateful to Vernon. After joining Delicar, I tried to help him expand his business. I have no reason to get him into trouble. You are lying through your teeth, Mr. Brooks. How shameless can you be? Counsel, please mind your speech. Do you have evidence to refute what Mr. Brooks said? Your Honor, I believe that the defense has shown their entire hand. Mr. Brooks has a motive to commit such a crime, and the evidence is... Mr. Brooks, you entered the restaurant last Saturday when I was collecting evidence. You openly confessed that you are immensely pressured to meet your sales targets, and that you want Mr. Green to purchase Delicart's premium public relationship services. If the food poisoning incident did not occur, then you would not have had a reason to convince Mr. Green to buy Delicart's premium services, correct? Mr. Green cares not about the negative reviews written by Delicart's ghostwriters. The positive reviews in his feedback book are worth infinitely more to him. Who stands to benefit the most from such an incident? Everything you said that day was recorded. Unexpected, no? In this recording, your tone of voice does not convey even a sliver of gratitude. Even if I would benefit from the incident, it doesn't prove that I did it. The recording shows that Mr. Brooks and Mr. Green are not on the best of terms, but it does not prove that Mr. Brooks committed the crime. Miss Melipona, you said earlier that Mr. Brooks' fingerprints were on the water dispenser, but were his the only ones found? The fingerprints of Mr. Green and the restaurant's 2 employees were also found on the exterior of the water dispenser. However, they are in charge of the restaurant's daily operations. It is not out of the ordinary for their fingerprints to be on the dispenser. Objection. Now we're objected to. We cannot rule out the possibility that one of the restaurant's employees disassembled the dispenser and poisoned the water. So you admit it's a criminal case and not negligence then, right? You admit that this is criminal. And if you admit that it's criminal, then that means that you're willing to give up the negligence that would allow your clients to get $30,000 of compensation each, right? Contaminating the filter without leaving behind fingerprints can be achieved with the assistance of tools. If this happens to be true, then the restaurant would be in more dire straits. You may have shot yourself in the foot. Why? Why would we be in more dire straits? Oh, if the restaurant did it. Poisoned their own water for some reason. Miss Melipona, Mr. Brooks may be a key suspect, but there is no decisive evidence that proves his guilt. I don't know enough about the courts to know if this was sufficient evidence, but I kind of feel like it was. Like, maybe did we just play it wrong or something? Should I show them the kitchen surveillance videos? You look at the gallery and see both Artem and Winnie sitting there. Artem looks at you in a cool and calm manner, as if he's telling you that a lawyer's judgment should not be influenced by their feelings when in court. However, you can't ignore Winnie's bloodshot eyes. Behind the video is an old man's internal struggles. No matter what Pedro does, Mr. Green will still regard him as a son. If Pedro's convicted, Mr. Green would be devastated. So I should we need to present it. I have one more piece of evidence to submit to the court. Mr. Brooks, do you remember installing a hidden camera in the restaurant's kitchen for Mr. Green so he could monitor the staff? You didn't. Back then, you studied hard to get into college, and truly were grateful for what Mr. Green had done for you. Remember this, it was neither Mr. Green nor I who proved your guilt in court today, but the old Pedro who still had a conscience. Ooh, chills. You submit the kitchen surveillance video to the judge. It clearly shows Pedro putting the insecticide into the water, leaving no room for doubt. In the gallery, Vernon sighs. You don't know when he had arrived. Mr. Brooks, what do you have to say in your defense? I didn't. All right, let's do this. Begin debate. Your Honor, I didn't do it willingly. Delicart forced me. They force us to do these things to reach our targets. If you're going to convict me, then you should round all of them up. Mr. Brooks, do you confess to the crime of poisoning the water? The court pronounces its verdict. The plaintiff sued Mr. Green for food poisoning due to management negligence. This trial has significantly changed the nature of this case. The court rejects the plaintiff's claim for damages. Whether Mr. Green is liable for compensatory damages will be determined after the conclusion of the respective criminal case. Bailiff, take Mr. Brooks into the custody of the court and transfer him to law enforcement. Vernon, how could you do this to me? How could you? Pedro tries to break away from the bailiff's grip and lunge towards Vernon in the gallery, but the bailiff holds strong. Thank goodness for that. Both Winnie and Artem are standing up and shielding Vernon from Pedro. Seeing Pedro like this, Vernon can't help but weep. Oh, that's so sad. There really is no hope for you. Maybe it wouldn't have come to this if I kept you home and didn't let you find a job. No, Vernon, I know you're trying to tell yourself anything to comfort yourself, but I can promise you, this isn't on you. There was nothing you could have done. Vernon turns and leaves the courtroom with Winnie's help. What? Not only did I lose to Artem, but also to their junior lawyer? Unbelievable. Court is adjourned. Trial 1, baby. Trial 1. Defense successful. Looks like we're on the last level of the first chapter. Artem's office. Soon after you had submitted all the evidence to the prosecution, the criminal court took charge of Pedro's case. With all the conclusive evidence, he was swiftly convicted and sentenced. Mr. Green and Penny's Comfort Foods were found not at fault and therefore not responsible for compensation. Pedro was liable for the victim's compensatory damages. Good job paying them back on your $0 a year salary, babe. Word has it that Pedro revealed Delicart's shady and illegal business practices in court, which led to a lawsuit against the company. Awesome. And now all previous talks of investments remain just that. What is on your mind? Thinking about the case now reminds you of how heartbroken Vernon was. Immersed in those somber thoughts, it takes you a while to realize that Artem is calling you. Sorry, Mr. Wing, were you talking to me? Why did you present the surveillance video in court? It wasn't your style. Because I knew what Mr. Green really wanted wasn't to save Pedro, but for him to turn a new leaf. If I withheld that video, Pedro would have never reflected on his own mistakes. He would have continued farther down his twisted path, and Delicart's crimes wouldn't have been brought to light. Good. You're growing as a professional. Mr. Wing, are you really praising me? Don't become complacent. Artem sighs. He turns around and picks up a few blue packets from his desk. Are Airson's effervescent packets related to the case? Are they Mr. Green's? They're his, but they're not related to the case. They were probably brought back together with all the other evidence. When you left the restaurant that day, Luke had packed the evidence bag for you. He likely threw the packets in without much thought. They weren't needed during the trials, so I put them in my folder. I haven't organized it yet. How is Mr. Green's recent mental state? Are these things related? Winnie said that Mr. Green was diagnosed with depression. It might have been caused by Pedro's chronic harassment. Thankfully, the case is over, so he can properly rest up. I see. Artem is silent for a moment and then suddenly changes the subject. I have a document that needs to be delivered to a psychologist named Vin Richter. I can't leave right now. Can you deliver this for me? The address is on the box. Vin Richter. You've heard this name before. He is a widely renowned expert on psychology. They say he has focused on criminal psychology in the past 2 years and has published many papers. Many prestigious universities wanted him as a lecturer. For some reason, Vin Richter refused all of their invitations and quietly settled down in Stellis. I've wanted to meet Vin for a while. He and I are only business associates, not friends. Be mindful when talking to him. Don't worry, I'll treat him like a business partner. Good. Thanks, and take care. PAX President's Office. Meanwhile, at the PAX Group's headquarters, the atmosphere in the President's office is suffocating. Speak. You were so quick to make those investment decisions. Why don't you dare say anything now? Mr. Von Hagen, we didn't know that Delicar earned their profits from extorting their clients. They kept everything under a tight lid. Even if we heard rumors, we couldn't get any evidence. What you're saying is that the big data lab that costs us millions to maintain every year is just a fancy dictionary, not a supercomputer? No, that is not what I meant at all. Couldn't get any evidence. It's not like I told you to prepare for court. From where I'm standing, it looks like you lacked the decency and responsibility to even look into them. Even if they didn't extort their clients, the PAX Group and I would never support them for falsifying reviews. You remember this. As long as the PAX Group is under the name of Von Hagen, it will not profit even a single cent through such underhanded means. Yes, sir, I understand. I will immediately handle whoever is responsible. Whoever is responsible? No need. Handle yourself first. PAX Capital is my mother's legacy, and you've played a large part in dirtying it. I hear that the owner of Delicar is your relative. Mr. Von Hagen, You've been with the company for a long time, so I'll spare you a lawsuit. You may leave. Do not show your face on any of the PAX Group's properties ever again. So I'm guessing that was Marius. And I like him. Protecting his mother's legacy. That's pretty cool. But after all of this, we finished chapter 1, and I gotta say, it was a wild ride. I liked the trial mechanic. I thought it was really fun. I feel confident now, like I did something really cool. I'm just really liking the plot. I'm liking how they're subtly weaving things in. Like, I really think that Aerson's effervescent packets have something to do with like increased mental health issues that are going on in Stellis. This is just me spitballing. I read something about mental health problems earlier, so I was like, maybe this is some sort of like foreshadowing. I don't know. We'll see when we tune in for chapter 2. I'm really looking forward to it. Really hoping that you guys are enjoying this series so far. And as always, it's Melipona, your favorite dating sim YouTuber, here to sign off. I really hope that if you haven't subscribed, you'll decide to subscribe, click that bell, all of that wonderful noise that helps channels like mine grow. And as always, this is the end.